Hi everyone, Walter Bowne here. So we're reading, or you're reading, The Great Gatsby, and it's chapter one. And of course, Nick talks all about his ethos in the beginning to establish his credibility as a reliable narrator. So we know he comes from money. He went to Yale. He goes to New York to learn the bond business. He rents a place in West Egg next to millionaires. So we know a lot about his background. And then he goes to East Egg, the old money address, to visit his second cousin, who he hardly knows, his old friends who I hardly know. So let's take a look at the characterization of Daisy Fay. Well, Daisy Fay is her maiden name, but that's significant because Fay is a fairy. He gets this, Fitzgerald gets this from his favorite poet of all time, the great English romantic poet, John Keats. And we'll be looking at a little Keats in throughout Gatsby because The Great Gatsby is a poetic novel. That's why I don't think it's ever been filmed well, because there's so much poetry to it. But Daisy is a flower. A traditional daisy is white petals with a yellow center. That will be significant in the novel because the white symbolizes purity, and Daisy is always in white, as we'll see in this analysis here in chapter one, but the yellow center is yellow and it's corrupted, right? As we'll see in the novel, there's the yellow, but there's this corruption of yellow in the middle. Myrtle is also a flower, but we'll get to that later. But let's take a look at Daisy. And I have some underlying things here that we'll talk about. All right. He first meets Jordan and Daisy. Two women were buoyed as though anchored on a balloon. So already we have water imagery. Almost every page of Gatsby contains water imagery, which is another lecture altogether. All right. But they're like fairies. Daisy Fay, they're not even grounded. They're floating, right? They're so light. They're so ephemeral, right? And they're in their white and they're rippling and fluttering, all these beautiful words that Fitzgerald uses. And oftentimes with Daisy, we never really get a good physical description of her. We do it a little bit, but Fitzgerald is so keen on voice. It's Daisy's voice that's the most intoxicating. And he brings it up time and time and time again. Famously later, a character, I don't want to give it away, says, yeah, her voice is full of money. All right. But let's take a look at this. All right. She makes an attempt to rise. Imagine being so bored and so wealthy that you can't even rise. You're just making an attempt to rise. And she has this charming little laugh. And she says, I'm paralyzed with happiness. All right. That seems oxymoronic, right? Is she really happy? No, this woman is bored out of her mind, right? She's just been sitting on this couch just in the heat, in her white dress, floating on this couch, right? And then she says, she hinted in murmur that the surname of the balancing girl was Baker. So it's a murmur. Her voice is this balancing girl who's also balancing is her friend Jordan Baker. And he says, Fitzgerald, I've heard it said that Daisy's murmur was only to make people lean toward her. Right? Wow. Talk about characterization. She controls people through her voice. So she's a low talker. That means she draws people in. This is one of the many reasons which makes Fitzgerald a master craftsman, because he adds details like that makes Daisy a real person, okay? And then later in the paragraph, right around here, in the next paragraph, again, Baker's lips are fluttering and doing all these things, and Jordan is very similar to Daisy, but different, as we'll talk about. Jordan Baker, it's a man's name, also a female name. She's a cadet. We'll talk about her. Daisy is much more feminine, and Jordan's feminine, but in the 1920s way that femininity was being manifested. And we'll talk more about that. But she has this low, thrilling voice, and she has bright things in it, bright eyes, bright, passionate mouth. This is all the use of anaphora, where you use words at the beginning of successive clauses. All right, so it repeats, it's repetition. She's done gay, exciting things, just a while since, and will do gay, exciting things hovering in the next horizon. Again, here's this word of like, about hovering and fluttering and just being buoyed up, all right, floating around as if she's, again, a fairy, all right, a fairy queen. All right, let's take a look at the next passage. Here, let me get this in the screen, all right. Gatsby's name is mentioned in chapter, later in the chapter. Jordan says, you must know Gatsby if you live in West Egg. And then Daisy says, Gatsby? What Gatsby? All right. Imagine if you haven't heard a name in years and it's some strange name like Maximilian, or, it's not like John or Joe or whatever. It's like some stage name, like Lady Gaga or something. And so she mentions it and then drops it. Again, a master craftsman like Gatsby plays with us. We will not actually meet Gatsby until chapter 3. We don't know the connection about this crazy Gatsby. Just throwing hints in throughout, like little clues, all right? And then slenderly, languidly, their heads set lightly on their hips, the two women preceded us into the rosy-colored porch, open toward the sunlight. A daisy needs the sun. She needs sun, right? And if it's sunset, daisies need sun, so there's going to be candles. She always needs light. She's white, always bright, always color, always with this color, okay? And then Daisy objects, why candles? Isn't there enough sunlight for me always? But no, there's candles. And then she says, and this is a very famous line, in 2 weeks will be the longest day of the year. Do you ever watch for the longest day of the year and then miss it? I always watch for the longest day of the year and miss it. Imagine if one of your friends is sitting around talking like this, right? Do you ever? No, I don't. That's something I don't do, right? I say this on the longest day of the year, though, to my friends. I'm like, hey, do you ever wait for the longest day of the year? I'm like, oh my God, you and Gatsby, okay? But she looks at us radiantly. Here's, again, another adverb that talked about her radiance, right? And then she says, we have to plan something, yawned Miss Baker. She's bored too, sitting down, all right, what do people plan? She's so bored, she's so rich, she has no idea what to do with herself. Your parents aren't like this, right? They have tons of things to do, going grocery shopping, paying the bills. She is the idle rich, right? And she has no idea what to do. So she is, the word here is bored. So a bored woman with a husband who's not paying attention to her, you can add one and one together and you know where this is probably going. Okay, let me get this in here. Here we have the contrast. Everyone in this novel is from the West. Tom, Daisy, Jordan, Nick, everyone is from the West. They've moved to New York to make it, because if you can make it there, you can make it everywhere, right? It's New York. It's where it's happening, right? And so Nick is not used to this kind of just, conversation, right? And then he says, you make me feel uncivilized, Daisy. Can't we talk about crops or something? I'm used to we're used to the Midwest. We talk about crops and farming. And it's a funny line. You make me feel uncivilized, Daisy, that I'm not like up to your, standards. And then Tom, of course, Tom is a total racist. And then he says, right here, civilization is going to pieces. He's reading this book by Stoppard and The Rise of the Colored Empires. We'll talk more about Tom. But Tom is a white nationalist. It's the 1920s, eugenics. We'll talk a lot more about that. So this anti-immigrant stuff is not new. All right, let's continue with our analysis of Daisy Buchanan, because she's an amazing character. This one I did not. Okay. She teases Tom. I know this is upside down. He reads books with big words in it. And of course, Tom doesn't understand anything that he's reading. He thinks it's all scientific. He's from Yale, but he went to Yale because he has money. His daddy went to money. His grandfather probably went there. It's all money, money, money. All right, bought their way into Yale. All right, so she teases Tom about his sophistication and he's like, All right, let's also take a look at, all right, here's more of that voice. All right, for a moment, the last sunshine fell. There's the light with the romantic affection glowing on her face. Her voice, again, compelled me forward breathlessly. You cannot withstand Daisy Buchanan. She is sort of like the mermaids or the Lorelei on the Rhine. that lure sailors to their death, or like Ariel, right? It compels you. You can't help yourself but be hypnotized by Daisy Buchanan's voice. Even the cousin is breathlessly listening, the glow fading, each light deserting her. Like the light is deserting her. Wait a second, that's personification, right? Light actually can't desert a person. You step into the light, but with Daisy, she is so full of radiance, it's deserting her. With lingering regret, it doesn't want to go. Please, I want to stay with you, Daisy, because you're so like seemingly magnificent. But we know there's that yellow core. She is corrupt at the core, all right? And it just leaves the children in the dusk, okay? And then let's take a look more of this characterization, all right? I got, this is the direct relation to Keats, all right? She says, I looked outdoors for a minute, and it's very romantic outdoors. There's a bird on the lawn that I think must be a nightingale. Come over on the canard. That's the canard of the White Star Line. Think of Titanic here. He's singing away. It's romantic, isn't it, Tom? Do you think Tom Buchanan cares anything about romance? He could care less. Right? We know he's having an affair with some woman on the phone that we'll meet in chapter 2. She's a horror show. But this idea of a nightingale, that comes from Keats's Ode to a Nightingale, right? About a bird that sings and will always be immortal. We'll all be dead, but the nightingale's song will live on for eternity. All right, so Ode to a Nightingale is a meditation on death and art that will remain forever. But she wants romance. Tom is not going to give her romance, all right? She needs to find someone who is going to give her romance, all right? Let's take a look at the next characterization of Daisy, all right? This is a direct quote, actually from Zelda, his wife, when they had Scotty, their only child. I think I've read, and I could be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure, that she says, I hope she'll be a fool. That's the best thing a girl can be in this world, is a beautiful little fool. Imagine, guys, if your girlfriend or hopefully wife says this to you, well, I hope it's a girl. That's the best thing you can be in this world, is a beautiful little fool. I'm like, that's crazy thinking, right? But that's what she thinks of girlhood, right? She can't really do anything. She can't go into business. She wouldn't want to go into business. She didn't go to college. She's just very, very pretty, and every guy desires her. She's the golden girl, right? She's the girl, she's the king's daughter that everyone wants to go to and go through the dragon to possess, all right? And then she says, I'm sophisticated. God, I'm so sophisticated. She is not sophisticated, all right? And then she says, the instant her voice broke off, again, voice. We get probably more descriptions of her in like an audio, like a vocal hearing thing, than we get visual, right? All right, let's take a look at another one. Here we go, the lamplight and the autumn leaf of her hair. That is an actual physical description, but the yellow is a yellow that is dying, not actually like yellow that is, there's different types of yellow. But it's the ripeness. And you know when something is ripe, it's going to go bad very, very soon. Glinting, fluttering, all these words and adjectives and metaphor to characterize Daisy Buchanan. All right. Here we have, she says, oh, we're from Louisville. We spent our white girlhood in Louisville. Our beautiful white breaks off. Did you give Nick a little heart-to-heart on the veranda, demanded Tom. Tom is worried that she's been talking to Nick about how bad he is. And he's horrible. His name's a cannon, right? He's booming. He's destructive, right? He destroys people. Look at his name, Tom Buchanan, right? He breaks her thumb or busts her thumb and look at you brute hulking of a man. I hate that word, but he says it anyway. She throws salt in the wound, right? And did I? She says, I can't remember, but I think we talked about the Nordic race. Yes, I'm sure we did. It crept up. She is teasing Tom about being a white nationalist. Oh, yeah, we talked about being white people. That's what we did out there. Yeah, Tom, right? So any excuse she can do. She knows that Tom's having the affair. There's really nothing that she can do about it. Nick says, I really, really hope she can just run away and leave this crazy place, but she won't. Right? And of course, we know probably